from the Professor of Military Science, Army ROTC, Norwich University, and he'll be leading our ROTC panel. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. So, again, Colonel Steve Roberts, Norwich University. So I was asked to moderate this. Just a little background for me, cyber officer. I'm the old guard, right? I've been around for a minute. Started out in RSERC SWAB, JTF-GNO, US Cyber Command, NSA, etc. But, again, I have the honor of moderating, a panel, an ROTC panel, where we're going to talk about risk management, fundamental for cybersecurity. Or we're going to hear from the new guard, right? These are our future leaders, not the old guy, right? So our panel members this time come from 3 senior military colleges that have been producing Army officers for over a century. Many of those senior military colleges are really trying to ramp up their cyber programs. There's an incredible talent, not only on the cyber side, but then they also have the inherent leadership that comes out of the senior military college. We have representatives from Citadel, Virginia Tech, and the birthplace of ROTC, Norwich University. Each of these institutions produce about 100 officers annually, along with North Georgia College, VMI, Texas A&M, and then as well as the 4 junior military colleges. We generally produce about 800 officers annually. That's an enormous amount of the ROTC officers, high percentage. Today we present an opportunity to hear from the next generation of cyber leaders. And first, let's meet some of our panel members. So first, Second Lieutenant Paige Ressler. She just graduated in April. She'll introduce herself in a second. Cadet Connor Blutstein, who's from Virginia Tech. And then Cadet Dylan Acosta, who's from Citadel. Cadet Tyler Borges, also from the Citadel. And then Second Lieutenant Scott Gauthier from Norwich, as well as Second Lieutenant Laura Deaton, also from Norwich. So, panel members, please introduce yourself.
All right, good morning. I'm Second Lieutenant Paige Ressler. I just graduated from Norwich University this past April. I graduated with a bachelor's in computer security and information assurance, as well as a minor in information warfare. I was heavily involved with the Corps Cadets. I was a member of the drill team, as well as the cavalry unit. I was a member of the Cyber Leader Development Program, where I had the opportunity to have a few internships, one being with the NSA down at Johns Hopkins and augmented reality.
Hi, I'm Connor Blutstein. I am a resident senior at Virginia Tech, and I'm studying computational modeling and data analytics, focused on cybersecurity and cryptography. And I've done a lot with our Corps of Cadets, acting as cadre and on the S6 shop. I've done several internships in the private sector at the Army Cyber Institute and others. And then I've also done a lot of work with our cybersecurity club. I'm now serving as the president of our cybersecurity club, where we have over 400 members.
Good morning. My name is Dylan Acosta. Currently attend the Citadel. I am a senior, currently studying cyber operations. I am part of the CLDP program at the Citadel, named the CDCI. I currently drill with the 135th Cyber Protection Company in South Carolina. I'm currently really involved in the Corps of Cadets. I serve as my company's human affairs officer, making sure everyone is mentally and physically ready for anything that is thrown at them during their Corps Cadet career. And I am the Citadel Cyber Club Vice President.
Good morning. My name is Tyler Furchess. I also attend the Citadel. I'm a senior. I major in computer science and cyber operations with both my majors. I'm the Citadel's Cyber Club president currently. I am also under a scholarship for service contract with the federal government that requires me to work for the Department of Defense for 2 years after I graduate. I've been blessed to be able to participate pretty largely with the Corps Cadets leadership, serving as November Company's first sergeant last year, and now Delta Company's commander. I've been able to intern with the NSA, and I'm currently a Security Operations Center analyst for the Citadel.
I'm Scott Gauthier. I'm from Norwich University. I graduated and commissioned out of there this past spring. Branch cyber for the Army, and on top of that, I'm going the EW path. My major was in computer security and information assurance with a concentration in digital forensics. I held a couple minor upperclassmen roles in the Corps of Cadets, and also a number in the ROTC department.
Good morning, my name is Laura Deedy. I graduated from Norwich University in April with a Bachelor's of Science in Cybersecurity and a minor in Information Warfare. My focus was on digital forensics. I also participated in the Corps of Cadets at Norwich as well as the Cyber Leader Development Program. And through that program, I was able to get some internship experience with NSA Experiential Tour last summer down at Fort Meade, and some other intern experience working with Norwich University Applied Research Institute. I'm going to BOLIC in June of 2025, and so in the meantime, I'm working at Systems Planning and Analysis in Alexandria, Virginia, working as an operations research analyst.
Yeah, so maybe just expand upon where you're going next and what your next goals are, right? Because we have a very diverse crowd here, right? Some of them are active duty cyber officers, know that already. Some of them are National Guard, and then we have the one that's going to be a DoD civilian. So just maybe expand upon what your next path is, and maybe what your desire is. You know, because obviously cyber is both Alpha, Bravo, and Delta. So maybe just expand upon that.
I'm going to BOLIC in January. I'm currently working on getting some certificates at the moment. I'm going to be 17 Alpha. I hope to pursue to be 17 Delta leader down the line, and eventually get a master's.
Yeah, so currently I'm also an SFS scholar recipient, but for me, I'm trying to go into the National Guard, do it with ROTC. And so on the SFS side, I'm trying to also do federal government, whether that's NSA or FBI, something with more offensive side of cybersecurity, because that's what I really enjoy. The National Guard, looking to branch cyber, do 17 Alpha, and in kind of after school, I'm doing an accelerated master's in computer applications, and you're going to use my year before BOLIC with that.
Do you know which state you want to live
Ideally Virginia, but I don't really care, especially as long as they have something cool in cyber, right?
As I mentioned before, I'm currently in National Guard scholarship, so I will be commissioning into the National Guard. Right now I'm drilling at the 135th Cyber Protection Company located in South Carolina. Although I might be a little bit biased towards that unit, I'm really looking to branch cyber anywhere. And then on top of that, I want to try to find like full-time employment with a DoD agency, preferably the NSA or the FBI, particularly in computer forensics and malware analysis.
Currently, I'm looking for full-time employment with any DoD agency. I know my top picks are NSA, CIA, and FBI. I prefer to work at anything inside of that realm. Eventually, I would like to go and get my master's in computer science with an emphasis on secure software development. So right now, I'm just kind of bouncing between full-time employment opportunities.
So I commissioned active duty out of Norwich and branch cyber. So right now I'm got about a 9-month wait until I go to my 17 Alpha training. And then following that, I was selected to go with the 17 Bravo training for EW. I'm currently looking for a way to fill up that time in between now and next June.
Yeah, and then any thoughts on follow-on? Right? Because that's a Bravo, we have a slightly different path forward.
Right, yeah, as EW, that's going to open me up to a lot more options, so I'm going to be able to work with more within BCTs outside of just the strict 17 Alpha positions. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I also commissioned active duty Army. So after BOLIC, during BOLIC, I'll be pursuing the 17 Alpha course, and I have intentions of getting a master's. And in the meantime, until then, I'm also studying for Sec Plus.
Awesome. So obviously a very talented crew here, right, with varying different paths, everything from Alpha to Bravo, including DoD civilian. So first question, we'll start since you're next to me. What do you think is the nation's greatest cybersecurity threat? Right? We'll just hear what your responses are.
I'm not going to say the typical answer of what we all think, China, Russia. But I'm going to say that any adversary that has an abundance of resources and funding and unlimited support from not only the government or just the state as a whole, if they are left unchecked and have limited oversight and they have limited regard for ethics and regulation, then I think any institution or organization or nation state that has unlimited funding and endless support is a threat.
Yeah, so last year I attended a cybersecurity competition called Hack the Hospital 2.0. We had to do kind of qualifiers in order to make it to this competition. It was held outside of Fort Meade. And it was all about, as the name says, hacking into a hospital. They set up all the equipment, they set up, they had a check-in desk, they had internal and external networks, and they were trying to make it as similar to actually hacking a hospital and what that would look like. But it taught me a very important lesson, and while we were hacking all of these ICS devices, it taught me how vulnerable this all is, because we were able to completely compromise getting all the PII from the hospital within a couple days of working, and a lot of that was reconnaissance. Just imagine what another country could do to our nation. And that was so important to me and really showed me firsthand our critical infrastructure is incredibly vulnerable. And if we don't do something about it, if we don't defend it, then who's gonna defend it?
In my opinion, one of the biggest threats in cybersecurity and in the cyberspace is the fact that cyberspace is now the fifth domain that we have to deal with in terms of active combatants, and it's the only domain that is really not limited to the laws of physics and physical structures. This is a completely 100% man-made area or battle domain that we're dealing with, where no longer are the days of seeing mass forces on a border ready to invade a physical space. These attacks can happen almost instantaneously, and obviously that we have our nation-state threats such as Russia and China that have lots of money and funding that are going to attacks and trying to find out vulnerabilities. We're dealing with a new problem where we could be attacked from anywhere at any time by anyone, and I feel like that is going to be our biggest concern and cybersecurity vulnerability moving forward, and that's why 0 days, especially developed on the black market and sold online to these nation-state threats or to ransomware attackers, are the biggest threat.
I think looking into the future, that once somebody is able to weaponize AI into a way that it's no longer just a proprietary kind of secured thing that a lot of AI is right now. When you look at kind of the landscape of what it is, it's all these proprietary programs that have a ton of restrictions on them. But what will happen when AI is given to somebody who knows how to how to manipulate it and how to use it in such a sense that it has no restrictions? How long will it be until somebody's able to open up a chatbot or whatever it is and say, execute this command, do this attack on this person at this IP? And I think once we get to that point, it's going to be devastating for both agencies, private sector, and potentially the military. So, you think about the improvement that AI has made in the past 2 years compared to where it started back in 2022 and where it's at right now in 2024, it's light years ahead, both in all senses, whether that's just conversing with a human, making programs, whatever it may be. So, and it's just getting faster and faster and better at an exponential rate. And I think AI, compared to a lot of the other units that the agencies and also the military might have, it's going to be impossible to keep up with unless we understand how to handle it and have a plan of action going forward.
This last January, both myself and Lieutenant Ressler were fortunate enough to go to the Cyber Leaders Conference, which is put on at the West Point U.S. Military Academy every January for cyber branch cadets. And what I really picked up from there, talking to those within the cyber branch, was how big, like some others have mentioned, those near-peer adversaries, those nation-state hackers were. Both hearing from the experiences of the soldiers and just reading the theme of the overall event, that's really what they were preparing a lot of us soon-to-be cyber officers for. So that's really what I see as the biggest target ahead of us.
So China and Russia are the most active and persistent cyber threats to the U.S., and this could be for government, critical infrastructure, and private sector. For avenues of attack, I think that we need to focus on ransomware attacks, AI for malicious intent, supply chain attacks, and especially Internet of Things as it's becoming increasingly popular.
All right, so for the next question, I'll actually start in the middle. So Dylan, I'll throw this one to you. You can breathe. Which concepts do you think will be, the most important for the military to not only maintain, but then, build upon for a strong cybersecurity posture? Because you just talked about all those threats, right? So how do we respond to that?
Carl, can we ask a question? Yeah. So, referencing the last question, in perspective, you kind of hit it on the head. I'll stay down. I mean, you might. So you hit it on the head by AI. What about the rest of the panel? Are you guys actually being taught about AI, cybersecurity within AI field? I mean, you in the middle, the cadet, you hit it, and the lieutenant at the end hit it as well too. I'm old school like you, sir. I grew up in the 80s in the military. Cybersecurity was not a thing. AI is not a new flavor of the month. So do you think AI is going to be the biggest threat in the cyber world? It's not China, Russia, or anything like that. It's Joe Blow over here. He can start doing, chat box and launch nuclear codes. So I'm just figuring if each of you guys are being taught AI, detecting the AI.
If I
Yeah,
can say.
so maybe first start with, how much AI was incorporated in your programs, and then,
Yes, sir. And I appreciate the question. We just started, I believe this year at the Citadel, having our first AI class. So honestly, it doesn't depend on a lot of things, but trying to keep up with the news and see just what it can do, it's already becoming a very integrated part of our life, especially into the private sector. So I think it's been a really big opportunity. I personally have not heard anything with the military or agencies using AI in a weaponized format. And I think that's a really big opportunity that's being missed out on right now. I think for a lot of the cyber programs that are at colleges right now, I think there should be a much larger emphasis, especially in those foundational classes, about what AI can do. I think by integrating AI and even making AI trying to put AI into a format to where it can be used in the same essence that like an IDE is used, would be super beneficial, and there's a lot of possibilities with it, to where if you could just type up, I want to create this script that will do this to this business, and I think by doing that and figuring out how to defend against that, it'd be incredibly beneficial. Because if somebody, whoever it is, like Joe Schmo, goes up and creates their own chatbot that is able to execute commands with zero restrictions or zero ethical dilemmas, it will absolutely ravage whoever it's used against.
Okay. I actually kind of want to take the opposite approach to that. I would disagree about AI. I think it's important to kind of protect against and to keep in mind, but I believe right now it's more of a buzzword sort of term. And I've attended a lot of conferences where people just really talk about, oh, AI this, AI that. But I've had a lot of hands-on practice doing like offensive cybersecurity and trying to use AI, and also designing my own large language models to work with attacks, and also attacking large language models. And I've really found that the whole idea behind AI is, all right, it's going to use the most probable next answer. And with that, it really can't come up with new ideas. So that means it really can't come up with 0 days. And that I believe is more of a threat than someone using AI for kind of script kiddie sorts of attacks. Granted, it's still something to keep in mind, but I believe it's talked up a little bit too much than the threat it actually is.
To follow up with that, I think that I agree with Cadet Bluestein about how AI is not going to be the end-all be-all or like the final determining factor when it comes to security. It should still be treated as a threat because it could take regular script kiddies and make them serious legitimate targets that we have to deal with within the cyberspace and defending it. But I would take it one step further and saying that I guess the ultimate deterrence of cybersecurity and also on the other side of the coin, offensive cyber would be quantum computing. Whoever could figure out quantum computing in either an offensive or defensive posture will win the whole domain because it's just such a new concept, and it's a concept that in general speaking could revolutionize the entire cyberspace in a sense that no other person or adversary or near-peer competitor can compete with quantum computing unless they develop some other sort of faster quantum computing themselves.
I said one more thing, sir. To Mr. Bluestein's point, I do agree to an extent that AI can't come up with their own ideas. We have to remember, I don't necessarily disagree that AI right now is capable of doing these things, but you have to look at both the short-term and long-term future about AI's here and it's not going to go anywhere. You know, it's the same thing as with the introduction of like an iPhone, for example. You know, everybody thought it was going to be the flavor of the week, but I think with how capable it could be going into the future, I think it's going to be a very severe thing, both in the workforce, private sector, agencies, whatever it might be. And AI absolutely can come up with new ideas and new like things on its own. For example, there was a company, I forget whether it was located in China or the United States, where an AI program developed its own language, and it was not interpretable by humans in any capacity. So I think if you use that and kind of scrape it onto its next, next foundation, or especially if you like specify it on a certain task, it's going to be able to come up with its own coding language, its own kind of attacks that humans might not have thought of. Like, that's the whole idea with AI, in my opinion, is that yes, it recommends the next most likely thing, but at what point does artificial intelligence actually become artificially intelligent and have its own way of thinking in a way that humans can't understand? And that is what, in my opinion, is going to create very dangerous situations for the entirety of the United States.
Thoughts? I'll also just add that some academic institutions are still struggling with how do you introduce in a healthy manner AI without creating a old thought cheat engine for folks to just get answers to the test, right? And academia specifically is struggling with that. You'll see the introduction into the cyber schools where the rest of the organization is sometimes struggling with, okay, how do we introduce ChatGPT in a meaningful manner and still maintain academic standards? So I'll just restate our original questions, which had to do with, which concepts do you think will be the most important for the military to maintain a strong cybersecurity posture? I guess we covered AI, so you got to take that one off the list.
Yeah, definitely. AI would definitely be top of that list. But I would say the biggest focus that the U.S. military and the government needs to focus on is securing the user. The user is always going to be the weakest link in any type of security posture, no matter if it's physical security like sentries on a base, or in the sense of network security where you have firewall rules and domain admins. The user is always going to be the one that gets targeted at the end of the day. The firewalls will do their jobs. The ones and zeros always will, 1 and 0 at the end of the day. But the user is always going to be the one that really loads that payload or clicks on that malicious link. So increasing that cybersecurity awareness and realizing like what it means and like to be hacked. I know that's like a buzzword, and the movies haven't really done a really good job of describing like, oh, I'm in. But really the way I feel like that you really show people and like and stress the importance of cyberspace security is show them physically. No one cares about like the rootkit that you use on a Raspberry Pi to load a Kali image to affect a water tank. They care that their water is now unclean and an entire town can no longer eat, drink, or use that water for beneficial purposes. And I think that is going to be the biggest thing that we need to show the U.S. military and the government that cyber is no longer ones and zeros on computer. It now affects day-to-day operation and our lives.
So Laura, I'll pick on you at the end since you've been last the entire time.
Yeah, so I would just say that having good defensive practices as well as continuing to build up cyber protection because it is evolving and continuously changing.
Scott.
Kind of building off of Cadet Acosta's your point about the wastewater or the water facility being shut down. Have a good incident response, so being able to respond to those events. Water's down, people are hurt, and showing that we can get things back up in a reasonable time, not something that's going to take forever. Showing that we have the ability to deal with these issues. Another idea that I kind of like is best defense is a good offense. So as far as building a strong cybersecurity posture, being able to show that we're not just on the defense the whole time. We're not just sitting back with our hands up. We're kind of doing something to protect ourselves by going after those adversaries.
Well, Scott, I'm going to put you on the spot since you're the only Bravo designee here. So think of it also from the standpoint of an RF perspective, right? So, obviously we have Wi-Fi enabled all the time. Our phones probably have Bluetooth and every other capability enabled and on all the time. So maybe think about what can we do from that kind of posture to help from a cybersecurity perspective.
Right. Are you thinking of like IoT? And kind of
Yeah, so either that or just how do you reduce your signature footprint, right, to enable somebody to basically get into whatever device you may have.
Right. Having more restrictions and being sort of being more
Signal aware.
signal aware of your emissions that you're giving off. Yeah, yes, sir.
Sorry, Tyler?
Yes, sir. Kind of going off with both Mr. Acosta and Mr. Guthrie said, I think securing data loss prevention is probably one of the biggest things. Recently, as just a couple of years ago, we've had incidents where unintentional data loss has revealed secure installations within the United States military, both domestic and abroad. So I think by securing data loss and making sure that all avenues, specifically with the end user, are secured is really important. And that comes down to little things like making sure your Fitbit that you have on isn't tracking the entire map of a U.S. Army base or something. It's just those small things. I think with a lot of actual blue teaming stuff, it's pretty secure for the most part for what we know up until a 0 day. But when it comes to things that you wouldn't think about, that's what needs to be secured more so, I believe.
I'd like to argue that all the points that the panel members made, all of those wouldn't be as successful if we didn't have all the partnerships that we do, which I would argue is the biggest thing in terms of the military's posture and stance being so strong and offensive, with all the organizations within the government and the DoD and all the partnerships, civilian sector, private sector, as well as the military, and having all those installations armed around the country throughout the combative commands. So I would say that partnerships is one of the most key things in order to have the resources, the funding, the support, and just the overall general knowledge of what are we going to do when all these things happen. And that's when all the points that they brought up would come into play. But they wouldn't be as successful if we didn't have support on either end. If none of us are on the same page, then we're not going to be successful. We're not going to get anywhere. We're not going to win this battle.
Connor?
I think everything's been hit.
Okay. So on the next question, we'll start down at the end with Laura. What lessons, either academic or your experiential, have been most helpful in framing not only your concept of cybersecurity risk management, but quite honestly, maybe just touch upon what made you want to pursue a career in cybersecurity? Because the reality is there's just not enough of it.
Yes, sir. So I would just say having different coursework, being a cyber major, as well as the extracurriculars provided through the CLEQ program and internship experience, being able to see it outside of the classroom, learning about the NIST cybersecurity framework and MITRE attack framework as well. Getting into cyber, I saw how China and Russia on the news were attacking us a lot. It was relatively new and unknown, And so that's kind of what sparked my interest. I wanted to learn more about it and get into it.
Scott?
Yeah, so something outside of just my academic experiences, for me to kind of build my view of risk management was recently I was working with my father at his storage facility, and I kind of picked up on a lot of things that he had that were off around the facility, things like windows going into the server room or passwords written on whiteboards, just simple things. Or, a real big one was over the phone, he was making changes to users' accounts without verifying who they were. It was all just going off of voice. And kind of when I brought all those up to him, he hit me with a, Scott, we're in rural New Hampshire. This man's 70 years old. I can change his account. And that kind of put in view for me what I'd heard from a lot of my professors of where you're going to be in situations where you're explaining what a big risk or threat is to a superior, and they're either going to be like, well, this is going to be worth or cause more damage if we make a change to it, to our business, versus letting it slide and trusting in the human part of it. So that was both frustrating, but also kind of eye-opening and something that I feel like I'll see again. Going into how I branched cyber, or wanted to branch cyber, I have a family member who was in the Special Forces and also attended Norwich. And out of high school, I wanted to do something to serve my country, but I didn't know where the best route was. And he pushed me towards the SMC Norwich because of their good cyber program. And he said that's the way to have the best impact. He said, it's not all about being boots on the ground anymore. He kind of guided me to that.
That's awesome. I mean, those challenges are real, right? So, real world story, and I've been in theater where we turned off all firewall rules because there was an operational requirement, right? Obviously, that is not a positive thing from a cybersecurity standpoint. You know, sometimes the user need or requirement overrides all security. We kind of talked about that earlier. But,
Yes, sir. So originally I picked up, so I started my cyber operations degree my sophomore year of college, and for that, essentially that entire year, I really didn't have a good foundation of what cybersecurity was, what cyber operations was, and how it would be applicable with my field, and just how to do anything, quite honestly. Then as I progressed through my junior year, I started being involved with competitions, research, volunteer and job opportunities, and that really taught me a lot, specifically the competitions, especially with hands-on, trying to figure out how to red team, how to blue team. And it got me really interested. I started falling in love with it, started doing competitions, traveling to do competitions, and that's what got me interested in it. And now, especially since I work as a security operations center analyst right now, seeing even just the tiniest things about, hey, lock your computer whenever you step away from it. You know, it's such a simple practice that not everybody thinks about. And that was kind of the reason I wanted to get into it, is just, you know, in the movie, you always see in the movies the hackers getting into the system or whatever it may be. That honestly was the thing that kind of sparked the idea for me. And then just seeing how the field actually works, how everything works, that got me super interested in it. So I think, obviously, there's the coursework that's become more standardized across the SMCs as time has progressed with like the NSA Cyber Excellence programs that they provide, and the CDCI, like SMC Cyber Institute programs that they have there. But I think actually getting some hands-on experience and working with those competitions, doing internships has been super impactful. One more thing is my internship with the NSA last summer taught us a lot about, our project was like largely about risk management, accessibility, and I think going into my junior year with the foundation of what risk management is and how to use different risk assessments to be able to get the most accurate understanding of how to access a piece of secure information was a super good way to have a foundation for my academic career and also competitions, and just build off of that.
Yeah, I would also like to touch on another point that I found out to be like very helpful for me. You know, just during my time as a cadet and as a student, is the people who've come before me, and like a lot of my mentorship. Going into like freshman and sophomore year, like I was learning like basic like coding classes, and I just didn't understand like the end goal, and I was just kind of going through the motions. And not until I joined our school's CLDP program and started talking to my juniors and seniors that are like, we're in the steps of commissioning or going to 3-letter agencies, and really showing me like why this is important, and like you realize you're a part of something bigger, especially in something as big as cyber, where every day the scope of cyber gets like reinvented, and you really don't know where you're at on the mountain. You just have to keep climbing it. I feel like that mentorship of someone just a little bit higher than you, just keep saying like, keep going, you're almost there, just kind of always sparking that fire. I think that's a big important factor within like learning, and that's one of the goals I want to do while I'm a senior still at the Citadel, is inspire that younger generation, just go get after it and have that like wants and desire to just learn and get out there and really make an impact and serve. And I think at the end of the day, that's one of the most beneficial things we have as a country. We have people that genuinely want to care, learn, and serve for the benefit of others and our nation.
So real quick, so you mentioned CLDP, so maybe expand on the acronym?
I think it's a Cadet Leadership Development Program, or Cyber.
Cyber Leader Development Program.
Yes, so the Cyber Leadership Development Program, most SMCs have it available at their schools. It's a program that cadets can join that are either in the Corps Cadets themselves or in master's programs, and they could go and their schools basically put them on the pipeline or the track of learning DoD style techniques and concepts, and really understanding what it means to have an NSA designation for like cyber excellence that we have here at the Citadel. And being a part of that program really puts you in connection with a lot of different people. I would like to thank Colonel Riddle in the back. She's like one of my biggest mentors, and she helps me out a lot. And I'm completely comfortable going into her office and being like, ma'am, like, I'm doing this, but I feel like this would be a good idea. And just having that ability to have those people and that mentorship and guidance is a really big deal. And that leads to internships, education opportunities, and just overall desire to learn.
Yeah, so much more than just the education, right? So who here was part of CLDP? I think you guys were part of CLDP as well, that paying for the internship, or was that directly with our cyber?
Our cyber.
Okay. So the point is that provides much more than just their academic education. It provides those opportunities. Fully funded program first with West Point, and then we've expanded that funding-wise through the senior military colleges. The intent is to expand beyond that, but it's a little challenging to get to all 270 plus ROTC programs. So Tom.
Yeah, so I'm going to get a little bit into my background. So growing up, I wasn't really allowed to play video games. And I was really young, all my friends were playing video games, and I'm like, this really sucks. I'm like, you know what my parents will let me do? Like, they will let me program. And so I'm allowed to get on a computer for that. So I think I was like 10 years old when I started programming, and it was super simple languages like Scratch, I want to say. And I really just started making my own games on that. So I thought I was going to go into video game development. But there isn't a whole lot of purpose in video game development, I found. And it's also not as interesting as cybersecurity. Because when I was in my senior year of high school, I was talking with my soon-to-be mentor for high school. I didn't know it at the time, and he just casually brought up, "Oh, have you tried hacking?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. What is this?" And so I started googling some stuff, watching some YouTube videos. I'm like, I can hack Wi-Fi signals. Oh my goodness, this is the coolest thing ever.
Don't get yourself in trouble.
Yes, it was my own hotspot that I hacked. And it was my own hotspot that I hacked, and I set my own password, but it was such a thrill of adrenaline that I got from doing that. I'm like, I know that this is what I want to go into. And now transition into college, I was kind of disappointed with the level that academia was at. I was looking at my course plan, I was looking at all the courses listed. I'm like, there's really nothing really cool. It's all stuff that is general computer science, all they have a basic networking class, but I would talk to my friends who took the networking class, and they're like, yeah, it's 10 years out of date. And it doesn't make sense anymore. And so that's when I got involved with our cybersecurity club. And I think those kind of the clubs and at the senior military colleges teams are so vital to the growth of cybersecurity because that's where I've actually learned everything. And it was going to competitions. I go to new competition almost every other weekend. And that's where I've learned over academia. And with programs like you were talking about, sir, we have similar programs at Virginia Tech that really focus and kind of pipeline you into Department of Defense and related government fields. And so those learning cybersecurity skills from competitions is so valuable. And for companies out there, I've been to so many very small companies that put on these like CTF competitions. And I don't think people appreciate how valuable those are. That's where I'm really learning. I've helped build a yes, CTF, Capture the Flag. It's a cybersecurity competition where you've got this flag in a system, and a flag is a string of text that you're trying to find, and a lot of times it's hacking into that system. So, but where is the system? You have to do reconnaissance, and you have to enumerate through the system and privilege escalate and really gain access before you're able to find these flags. And those competitions, I think the government does a lot. They do, the NSA puts on an NCX, which is really important, but I think a more focus on that really leads to more growth. And that's where to answer the question, finally, where my risk management has come from. It's a lot easier to understand how to defend systems when I personally have attacked them. And that's where I think growth needs to happen.
All right, Paige, you get to follow that.
Yay, okay, so I got into cyber in high school. There was a boy I liked in the Cyber Patriot team, so I naturally joined the Cyber Patriot team. Ended up not knowing what I was doing, but they brought in an expert who worked at Cisco. He was like our sponsor, our JRTC little sponsor. He would come every Friday morning, 7 a.m., so I would wake up and go every morning and ask him a bunch of questions and learn from it. Ended up being like really kind of okay, good at it. I ended up being a team leader in there. I didn't get the guy, but that's okay. So yeah, I knew I wanted to pursue cyber after that because it was really, really fun. The competitions, that's what sold me. They had like, every time you like win a point, they play like the Mario sound, when you like jump up and like eat, get the coin. It was like, woo! It was like so awesome to hear that sound. And all like my team, we would just sit on the carpet in the library and like struggle, bust the whole time. We didn't really know what we were doing, but that's exactly like what Connor was hitting on. Like, you had to figure it out yourself because you aren't going to get into the system unless you continuously research and ask around, collaborate. So you're not going to really understand what you're doing until you do it. And if you keep failing, then that's even better because now you're going to know what's wrong. Trial and error. So it's definitely that type of setting that kind of pursued me on that. So I knew dead set, graduating out of high school, that I was going to get cyber in the Army. And I was fortunate enough to actually live through that dream. So I'm going to side with Connor here and say that those competitions are definitely key in not only recruiting, but getting a good understanding and experience of what it is that you're actually looking at, and being able to get resources and learn from it.
So last question before we open up to questions for the panel. Pretend you're king or queen for the day. What are you going to focus on for the military? Near-term improvements, whether that's cybersecurity posture, technology, process improvement, culture change, AI, ML, some type of training. We need to do better cyber awareness. I don't know. What do you think would be that one thing significantly helpful? I'll start with you.
Honestly, I would make the argument about AI. I think because it is so prevalent now, you're seeing it everywhere. People can't decide whether or not the ad they're seeing on Instagram is real or not. It's everywhere. So I think the more that we see it, the more that we understand, and the more that we work with it, the more we're going to understand how to counteract it, or how to use it to our advantage. Be able to manipulate it in our favor. So I think that just the more that we learn about AI, and every chance we can to try and implement it within our strategy, I think that would be in our favor.
Yeah, so I believe the biggest improvement that we can that can be made in the Army is the level of recruiting. As someone personally who has considered dropping out of Army ROTC in order to pursue a career in the private sector because of several reasons, they pay more, they have that faster workflow, and had to convince myself, no, this is important to me, not just because of the job I'm doing, but because of the country. Going for recruiting is so vital because I believe that we're missing out on a lot of talent that's going over to the private sector that can really benefit. And I attended Mr. Garcia's talk yesterday, and he really talked about cyber scholarships. And Tyler and I are on the same SFS scholarship. I think creating more of these really all-encompassing scholarships to help people, A, get interested in cybersecurity, but B, also connect them with conferences and pay for them to go to conferences, pay for them to get certifications. I just got my Security Plus completely paid for by SFS. I wouldn't have been able to afford that as a broke college student. And it's kind of that level of recruiting because now I'm in a contract where I will be working for the federal government. I will be working for the Army. But putting more of an effort into getting good people into the Army is very vital.
So just to potentially accountable, there are plenty of programs out there, but we are horrible as an Army in marketing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I had to be told by word of mouth that this scholarship existed. And a lot of schools don't even have it. And if I hadn't known someone who was in it, then I would have never found out, never been in the position I am now.
What I've found is many times there's more money than we have applicants. And again, it gets back to the marketing aspect.
Yes, sir. Marketing is a part of recruiting as well.
I would definitely like to agree with Cadet Bluestein. I think our biggest asset and weapon moving forward is just going to be the recruitment. As you mentioned before, sir, you are the old guard and we are the new. And making sure that, people... Sorry. But just getting those... just getting that excitement and interest within just getting more people interested within cyber and really interacting with cyberspace is going to be the biggest thing moving forward. At our school, at Citadel, they always like to say, you're just as good as the class you were before you. And I think that goes along with, ROTC and especially with cyber. If you could do as many things in cyberspace as you want, but if you have no one to come after you and replace you and have that desire to get after the problems that we have within the government or in the military with cyber, it's ultimately going to be useless because you don't have that track or pipeline to aid you or add or multiply to the mission success. And there was a quote that I heard this summer from Major Valadares. He currently is working at the Air Force Institute of Technology. The ones zeros will figure themselves out. They've always done that. It's the people who need the attention and the drive to go after these problems. And I feel like that speaks volume, especially to the problem we have now where those opportunities are so plentiful and out there, and they're just waiting for people to go and apply to these things. But it's either A, they don't know, or B, and the biggest thing is they just don't think they can compete. They put themselves down and they just don't have that good support group or mentorship to say, hey, you can do this. We've all started at step zero where we don't know anything or we don't think we could do anything. And it's just maybe we figured something out. Maybe it was a competition that we sucked at and we eventually got better at. Or maybe it was just someone pulling us aside in a classroom saying, oh, you were really good at doing this. Maybe why don't you do this more? We just have to do a better job to ignite that fire in the generation below us and right now to really go after cyber and really have that drive to serve the country.
I'm not going to hit on recruiting again, but they are absolutely right. It's a huge issue that needs more marketing, especially. For me, if I was able to do anything with just overall cybersecurity, I think cyber awareness training needs to be way, way, way more hit on. The amount of, once you're aware of it and you're like, hey, I know what secure practices look like, both on an individual level and also on like a technical level, it's like just having like a red flag everywhere. You know, the amount of cyber vulnerabilities just at the Citadel, like on campus, people leaving computers on, people clicking on links that they definitely shouldn't, or being insecure just with their daily practices is insane. And honestly, it wouldn't take wouldn't take anything more than somebody with a flipper zero and a little bit of knowledge to go and just completely compromise, honestly, any institution or small business, in my opinion. So I think cyber awareness training and giving people a reason to care about it would be a great thing. I know when I was studying for my Sec Plus certification, there was one topic that was going over sending out a live fire activity that's just localized inside the company. I think that's a great idea, just sending out like a phishing email that is just a test to see, hey, are the employees at my company actually going to click on this? Are the people at my agency going to click on this? And if they do, then you can remediate from there. But there really isn't a lot of that right now. I know the Citadel, for the general student, and honestly even faculty members, has essentially zero cybersecurity awareness training. So I think hitting on that would be a really good thing to improve upon.
It's something that's kind of personal to me is growing the Army's ability to efficiently train soldiers. So like I mentioned before, I commissioned just this past spring, and then I have a 14-month wait until I go to my bullet class and get trained and actually 17 Alpha qualified. I think having that wait time in between is really hard to deal with for a lot of us if we're not prepared for it. Because in the real world, if I were to graduate with a cybersecurity major, I wait 14 months or 2 years, and that doesn't mean nearly as much as it did if it was the day after I walked out of the classroom. So I think near-term improvement, it might be selfish of me to say it, but I think getting our soldiers in the classroom sooner is something I would really appreciate.
So I definitely agree with what everyone said about advertising the opportunities so they're more aware. Cyber is also one of those fields that you can't just take a certification or get a degree and then you're set for your career. It's something that's continuously changing. So I think we need to have training that, every 2 years you get certified. And I know there's programs out there that do that.
Okay, with that, I'll open it up for questions. Do you have a mic?
Thank you. So one question for all of you. As you look at risk management and all the cyber vulnerabilities out there, what have you had in experience as far as training? And you touched on it when you talked about trying to explain it to your dad. Okay, a lot of times when you get out there, in the commercial world we call it business processes. In the military we call it mission and threats to mission. So what have you had experience-wise to try to explain cyber risk to someone who's not a cyber person, and how it's going to impact their operation or mission such that they're willing to try to get acknowledge the risk and try to fix it?
Yeah, I was smiling when you were asking that because it reminded me, I totally forgot my mom did this. She was texting this woman and they're sending photos back and forth talking about their day. And I'm like, who is this? And she's like, I don't know. And I'm like, okay. She's like sending photos of herself to this woman. And I said, well, like, who is this? Like, let me see what you guys are talking about. I'm scrolling up. They're just sending selfies back and forth. And they're like, yeah, I'm going to the store, my kid's at school, And I'm like, you have no clue who this is. How did you meet her? And she's like, I don't know. She just started texting me. And I'm like, how do you not see the problem with that? So absolutely blew my mind that my mom was doing that. So I had to sit down and I had to say, Mom, like, that's so not right. Like, this person is not right. And I even took the photos that this woman sent her. And I said, I'm going to run these through the AI scanner. I got to see if this person is real or not. And and I told her, I said, this isn't looking right. I said, I don't think you should be texting strangers that are just randomly getting your number. She's obviously trying to get more information. The fact that you sent her photos of yourself means she knows what you look like. She might have an idea of who you are as a person, your identity. I just had to sit down and wholeheartedly explain to my mom. It was probably like one of the hardest things I had to do, just because it was just like, I do not know if this is bad. So it's very frustrating to just, not frustrating, but it's just like taken aback. It's kind of disappointing. It's like, oh man, I didn't think that like people thought that I was real. So, and that's kind of the scary part too. Like a lot of people, like, and I'm gonna hit on the AI thing again. As much as like people say it's a buzzword, it really is. But that's the thing. Like, it's making people like more susceptible to what is real versus what is not real. And that's kind of the new challenge that we're facing here, where it's we can't even distinguish between what's fake and what's reality, and that's kind of concerning. So. That's going to be a big concern, a big problem that we need to face in the future.
Yeah, so
You're good.
I had a I was at a competition, the Department of Energy Cyber competition, and one of the challenges leading up to that is delivering a presentation on a cybersecurity solution to a C-suite. And I've never talked with a C-suite before. I'd had opportunities where I was talking with non-technical audiences, but I didn't understand how much of a challenge. And it really taught me that is the lesson behind that. Of a lot of people don't care why, what the intricacies behind cybersecurity. They care. It was brought up earlier: is my water going to work tomorrow? But not everyone thinks about that's cybersecurity behind that. And talking with that C-suite, answering questions, delivering our presentation in a completely non-technical way, taught me the importance of how do you explain a topic that's incredibly complicated, all the intricacies, without saying any of those intricacies.
One of the things that I struggle with all the time at school is, so when you first come in as a freshman, they give you your school account and they give you the default password, and it's usually like just password and your birthday. And the amount of juniors and seniors I've talked to that have not changed their password from the first time they've logged into their account is legitimately like very concerning. Like the amount of times I've talked to someone, like they're like, hey, can you log me out? And I'm like, yeah, like what's your password? And they're like, oh, it's like pass and their birthday. And I'm like, you haven't changed it in 3 years? And they're like, no, it's easy to remember. And it just, I have to like sit them down. I'm like, hey, like, I get it, we're cadets and we're isolated in our own little corner of the world, but if like those practices will creep into like business or DOD or the military, and next thing you know, we have people that oh, there's a data breach in this company, or oh, someone logged in and used admin to destroy our network because I have my password as pass 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's I feel like is really stressing that like the user aspect, as I mentioned earlier, is always going to be the weakest part of that link. Of you could have as many firewall rules and defense in depth as possible, but all it takes is just one person to be like click on a link or have their password as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and next thing you know, all those rules and admin rules and just the domains they just go in the trash, and someone gets access because someone ran like a quick hash cat, and next thing you know, someone's in within like 5 minutes of obtaining a username.
So unfortunately, we're out of time, but I wanted to get some help here in thanking our future cyber leaders, amazing kids. As the old guy, I am confident that the future is brighter than the past, and these folks are going to be those next leaders. So please help me